If you meet one of those two criteria, then it makes sense you're a business owner rather than a manager. If you don't want to, then you're going to be miserable. And hence, most likely, you're not going to be the best person to run it. So you have to find a way out. Investors that will say, okay, you cannot pay yourself $100,000 a month. That's fucking ridiculous. Get the fuck out of here. And they want to be this, serial entrepreneur while they're fucking poor because they haven't even done the one fucking thing they should. I wanted to get into a business of building data centers. The fuck do I know about data centers? I can do it with my fucking eyes shut. We made €1 million in revenue per month in month.
Today, we're going to have an interesting topic. We're going to talk about how to go from a CEO to an owner. And we're going to interview Martis. We're going to talk about his experience because he has a huge company.
Huge experience
Doing 200 million plus per year. Can you give us like a 60-second introduction about yourself?
Yes, the introduction is I'm a fintech entrepreneur. I started my first company in 2012, 2010 with my business partner, my best friend back then, Davis. We started the consumer lending business, providing loans to consumers over the internet. We grew the business to 100 million plus in revenue. This year, 150 million. We sold the company to Capitec, a South African bank. Last 4 or 5 years, we've been in this position of not a CEO, not a manager, but a company owner, but still actively involved in the companies. But other people manage those businesses for us. And so with those companies, we've gone into a consumer lending business model in other countries. We've built an investment platform where we bring in retail investors and we use that money to fund our companies. We have started an asset management business where we buy portfolios from banks and a number of other things. So that's been the journey for the last couple of years. And the big difference between, let's say, my career from 20s to 30s and now in the last couple of years is to be a business owner. So that's a very different mindset. It's a very different structure of how you organize your day, your work routines, how you manage the teams and people around you. And I guess that's the topic for today.
And I'm curious, what do you need to prepare to actually have this position where you could transition from a CEO or to an owner? And what in your mindset is necessary for that actually to be a good idea?
Yes, I think that's the main. Actually, I did a video on this on my channel, but but basically the main question is if it's a good idea in the first place. It's I think there is this fantasy that it's super cool to have many different companies. You're this owner, you're on a yacht, you do nothing, or you're kind of involved where you want. But it is a nice position. But it's not necessarily always great to be in that position, and it's not always good for everybody. So there are two instances where it makes sense to have a position where you're a business owner rather than an entrepreneur that's actually involved in the company as a manager. And those two instances is one is if you can find a person that's better at running the company that you have started. And second is if you simply don't want to be a CEO or a manager in the company you have started. Those are the only two instances where it makes sense that you step down, you step back, you become a business owner or shareholder, more or less passive or active, that's details. And so in both of those scenarios, there's criteria, et cetera, that we can talk about. But if you meet one of those two criteria, then it makes sense you're a business owner rather than a manager. If you're a super involved, aggressive, you want to work 24/7, you love the business that you're in, you are very capable at running it, it grows like hell, it doubles up every year in size, and you can manage it successfully, people have faith in you, you're a good leader, etc. Why would you step away from that position just to be, chilling outside? I mean, it's not going to be interesting to do nothing, and most likely you are likely the best person to run the business. Yes. So in many cases, it doesn't make sense to be in a position that I'm in, but in some cases it does make sense. So
to recap, basically, if you find a better person than you who could run the business,
yes.
Or the second thing is kind of together.
If you simply don't want to be the CEO or the manager of the company that you yourself built, then if you don't want to, then you're going to be miserable. And hence, most likely, you're not going to be the best person to run it. So you have to find a way out. So those are the two instances.
And on your story, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago?
Yes, it was basically in 2020, me and my business partner, we delegated the CEO position to a guy that was COO, head of operations. He became the chief executive officer in the business. We stepped down. We were passive, effectively shareholders, board members for the company for the last couple of years. And then we sold off our shares completely. Yeah.
The question that comes to my mind is regarding your own net profit or your own money in your bank. When you did this switch, putting a different person in as a CEO and probably maybe other positions, did your net income drop, or what happened to that?
Okay, that's a very good point also. It depends very much in different circumstances. I can only talk about my specific situation, which was interesting in that, let's say when I was the CEO of the company, I made a salary, right? And I largely also controlled the salary that I'm making. Yes, we had the board, the governance, the people, like the investors that would say, okay, you cannot pay yourself 100,000 a month. That's fucking ridiculous. Get the fuck out of here. Or we're going to replace you, right? But we were pushing the edge, right? So we could basically largely, because we were founders with a big stake in the company and kind of influence, we could, affect how much we get paid. Okay. When you're no longer in the executive management of the company, you don't get a salary, you don't get paid. So on a personal level, I stopped receiving a salary, okay? Then the second form of income is dividends, which is for shareholders. And so if the company chooses not to pay dividends, and if you're a shareholder in that company, that means you make no money. If the company pays dividends and you're a shareholder but not a manager, then you receive dividends, it's cool. In our specific case, over those few years that we were not in the management, we were shareholders. Collectively on the board, we decided not to pay dividends because we wanted to put all the money that the company was making back into retained earnings so that we could grow faster, have a stronger balance sheet, take on more projects, etc., etc. And this brings us into nuances about, board control, decision-making on a board. We can talk about that a bit later. So in our case, we didn't pay dividends. We didn't receive salaries that I was used to receiving, which were very big by Latvian standards, enormous, right? And so on a personal income level, I was far worse off. I just received no money all of a sudden since I stepped down. I had all of this extra time and less responsibilities, but I received no money. Okay. Hence, for us, it was important either to eventually receive dividends or to sell the company. Yes, and we decided that we want to sell the company because we were emotionally already kind of going away from the business. We had other things going on. The business was in good hands with the new CEO and so on. So we eventually sold it off, and then we made a cash out, which is again the third component, sale, right?
How many years did that take you to get the cash out?
Man, it took us very long. So we first tried to sell the company before COVID. COVID hit. The numbers went down. We had to consolidate, improve the operations, make them more effective. Then that kind of resolved, and then we were able to sell the business. So if you count the whole process, it's like 4 years. But if you only count the second attempt, it took us close to 2 years. Yes, very long. A lot of details. This is a whole different topic of selling a company, negotiating, having a board approval for everything, going out for a broker to look for buyers, then getting the deal approved by the regulators, which for us took 9 months for the central bank, both of Poland and South Africa, to approve the deal.
Of the buyout.
Wow. So you're just waiting for some guy in Poland who works in some licensing department to just check, okay, this is the new owner. It doesn't kind of violate any laws. It's fine. Check box. Now you're waiting for that for 9 months.
But in your situation, so basically when you left as the CEO, you received no money. The plan was to sell the company.
Yeah, and we couldn't sell it for 4 years.
But at the time when you did it, did you see a new opportunity where you're like, okay, this business has a cap. I'm going to pursue a new opportunity with an unlimited cap? Or what was the thinking behind that?
I don't think there was elaborate thinking. So it was more emotional in that we knew, or I knew, that I want to continue building companies rather than being a part of an established organization which needs to follow very strict rules. And it wasn't really therefore a calculation, okay, like there's going to be, better options there. I can make money in this way, more likely, et cetera, et cetera. It was just simply, I feel much better building organizations and doing entrepreneurial shit rather than sitting in boardrooms and explaining to regulated banks like my decision-making process. And hence, that was emotional first, and then rationality came later as we thought, okay, like let's build this business, let's see how it goes. Okay, we could do like multiple companies at the same time instead of like having this one group. and all of that, let's say, structure emerged eventually.
I think many viewers, and myself included, also are curious about the CEO. So when you find a person, okay, you maybe do a bunch of interviews.
Yeah.
How long does it actually take for them to integrate, know everything, and fully take it over? Like in your case, what was it, or how was it?
I'll actually go a step back to talk about, okay, so let's say that we know the two reasons why you should be a business owner rather than a manager.
Yeah,
very important. Okay. In many cases, you kind of hit that position. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs are just, they're entrepreneurs, they're not good managers. That's oftentimes the case. It's rare that a good entrepreneur is a good manager and they continue being able to run the business from nothing up to like hundreds of millions or billions or whatever. So that's rare. So we often hit this kind of scenario. The question is, for you to be a business owner in multiple companies, the main thing you need is money. If you have this fantasy that, okay, I'm not a successful, meaning I haven't made real money. Real money means, at least a couple of million, like half a million, at least, I would say at least a few million in liquid cash that sits in your pocket, in your bank account. If you don't have that condition met, then the idea of owning businesses and being a shareholder, owner, entrepreneur is nonsense. And many people have this fantasy. And that's why a lot of, I think, not a lot, but few entrepreneurs fail, is because they don't have enough money for their core business, but then they like this other shiny idea and that third project, and they kind of like borrow like 20K from a friend to do this and then something else, and they want to be this, serial entrepreneur while they're fucking poor because they haven't even done the one fucking thing they should. Right?
That's a good point.
Let's try to avoid being in that position. Okay. So number one criteria before we talk about anything, how do you hire a CEO? How do you make all that stuff happen? Is remember, you need to have capital to invest in order to be a business owner rather than purely a manager. If you don't have the capital, you're going to be stuck back into the square one, which is, okay, I have a cool idea. I want to be a business owner rather than a manager of that idea. How do I make it happen? I need capital. So I'm going to start going fundraising. Okay. And if you do fundraising, then you have to do it yourself because you cannot afford to hire anybody, right? So capital availability, that's number one. Of course, availability of time is important, but more importantly, capital, because capital can buy you time. So, okay, so that's just cleared out of the way. Your question about CEO, how to find a CEO.
Not how to find it, but when you find someone, how long did it take you to kind of onboard them properly? Because I can imagine, it's like a long time.
Okay, so there are different instances. I can talk about my experiences. Let's say we've started this business of buying overdue portfolios from banks, from non-banks, where we partnered up with a guy that is the CEO. He has a share in the business and so on. And other instances. How long it takes, how difficult it is, and these criteria depend on circumstances and nuances. What I mean by that is, let's say if I start a business in an industry that I'm an expert in, I have connections, I have understanding, I know which markets are hot, I know which products are, to be built, etc. That's one story. In that scenario, I'm most likely going to be very quick to find a potential CEO. It's not going to be a recruitment process that's formal where I need to engage a headhunting search firm, look for different people, have no idea if they're any good or not. If you do it in an industry that you're an expert in, kind of world class, you will be able to tell if the CEO is any good. You will be able to get references super quickly. That there are some companies where maybe somebody's being sold or bought, and there's some executives that are leaving. So you'll have this information field very much available to you, which reduces the decision-making time and execution time. If, let's say, I wanted to now, sell my businesses and start a new direction, I'll give you a good example that I think is amazing, is data centers for the AI companies. Yes, all the big seven and all the massive spenders that provide AI tools, they consume a huge amounts of energy, these chips, right, to make the calculations. And the demand for data centers to meet this need for calculation is growing like crazy. I read in some video that the need for data centers only for the top biggest US tech companies is met for like 7% or something. So that alone is insane. Anyway, so let's say I wanted to get into a business of building data centers. The fuck do I know about data centers? It's real estate, it's technology. I know nothing, right? It's probably dealing with local government municipalities. You need to find land plots near some kind of electricity producing assets. It's like a whole different ballgame. I know nobody in that industry. Okay, I could start finding somebody. And so that, let's say, it would take me like a year or two to find potentially a good CEO, to understand and kind of work on the business model, to define what could be a minimum viable sort of product data center that we could build, to figure out which country and so on. On the contrary, let's say I want to build a lending business, a consumer lending business. I can do it with my fucking eyes shut. I know different countries. I know potentially the CEOs. I know companies that can help me find a CEO. I know the types of deals that you do with CEOs. I know the salary levels. I know the type of CEO you need for the early stage, for a later stage. I know everything because I've done it for 15 years. Yeah? So just to repeat it again, but not managerially, but as an owner, it's not going to be difficult. Yes, I have the formula already available. So therefore, for me to start a business, basically, let's say you sell a company that you successfully built, you make 2 million, 10 million or more. And oftentimes the next logical thing is you just do the same thing. And this time you do it better, you do it more aggressively, you do it faster, and you don't do the managerial stuff that you don't want to do because you've done it for 10 years. Yes, that's a standard. That's a standard thing that often happens. Yes, entrepreneurs, they sell their company and they just basically copy paste and do another one because it's easy. But they don't take an active role. And then they get the benefits of being an owner, having a cool lifestyle, having a business that they know and understand very well, having an executive team that has, let's say, 20% share in the company, fucking all good, yeah? And in that scenario, it will take you probably 6 to 12 months to set it all up. I mean, if you're smart and aggressive. While, like I said, going into a different field, it will take you years, 2 years, 3 years.
But practically looking at what you just said, what are those couple of things you said? You were doing it for 15 years, you have learned the ropes, and then you do it aggressively, you probably cut the bullshit. Yeah. What are those things that typically are the bullshit stuff that most people do, but very not often gets results? What comes to mind? Or what is the most important thing to aggressively scale and grow?
Well, I think the most important thing is the fact that you can delegate almost anything to other people. So let's say in my mindset, when we were building the first companies, a lot of the stuff we had to do ourselves. One is because we couldn't afford any other resource. We couldn't pay to get resources. We couldn't pay to get a lot of people. And second, to some extent, you need to go through the details, the nitty-gritty yourself to really understand what it's all about. Yes, you cannot jump into a new field, have no understanding of it, and completely delegate everything. That's very complicated. Yes, you have to have some ground understanding of the business, and you can only get it by being in it, spending real hours yourself. There's no way around it. Yes, so that we did a lot when we had no other resources. Now the main difference is that I don't know. I can't put a percentage on it, but 90% of decision-making, activity, planning, strategy, etc., I can outsource to an executive team, given that it's a business model that I understand very well. Because I know what to control, I know what is important for me to focus and what to ask from the executive team, from the CEO. I know that they cannot bullshit me because I know the details, yes? And so therefore, I just need to provide the money, the thing that we discussed in the beginning, the starting capital. I need to maybe, with the help of the CEO or the executive team or myself, set some kind of an ambition, a strategy, a target, high level. And that's it. That's all you need to do. That's literally all you need to do. And here, by all you need to do, I don't mean that you simply sit back, you give somebody 500,000 or 100,000 or $1 million, and then you just meet 12 months later and you expect everything to be perfect. Of course not. But effectively, you outsource and delegate the creation of the business and the running of the business to that team. And your job is therefore to get the CEO. That's the key job. In some cases, in addition to the CEO, also get some other additional people. And that's all you do. and you don't get involved into what project management systems they use, how they create sales channels, you couldn't fucking care less. Yeah, you don't care where they set the office. You don't go to the office. You don't care about what pricing they use. What you care about is a pre-agreed budget, and you as a business owner want to see the budget delivered. And that is a very different position from a CEO that's involved or a manager that's involved in the company, because they do the day-to-day execution. I don't do the day-to-day execution. I don't care how it's done. And if I do care, and if I'm in a position where I can do better and I can see mistakes and I say, guys, this is ridiculous. You're making mistakes here and there. That means that the team is bad, and my only job is to replace the team. Yes, it's not to go on meetings and tell them, guys, you're missing out on this product feature that I saw other companies are doing. You should implement this product feature. I know it's going to work. Because if I am doing that, then the executive team is bad. Yes, and of course I'm making it kind of black and white. There are some instances with my experience, or simply the fact that I'm not involved in operations. Sometimes you get this bird's eye view that you can come into a meeting and you understand the nuances of the business, and you can suggest some things that your team that works on it 24/7, they are just kind of stuck in the daily stuff, and they just maybe don't see some kind of a new perspective. But it's rare. It's not like I'm a fucking genius that goes in and, guys, you haven't fucking seen this. This is what we have to do. It's not like that, right? They most of the times they've figured all the ideas that I have in my head. They've thought about it. I can only steer a little bit the ambition. I can maybe demand some more results and things like that. So that's the big difference.
I have a 2-part thing I would love to know, and I think audience also would love to know. When you started these new ventures, what was the fastest result from zero, zero idea, execution, and it makes turnover is $1 million plus per month? And what was the framework, maybe some ideas how to do that? And then I have a second part of the question.
The answer is Jordan. So we started the business in Jordan, completely, experimental. We didn't know much about the country. I had not been there ever. And we started a consumer lending company in Jordan. So we provide, in actual branches, we provide loans to the local customers, consumers. We made €1 million in revenue per month, I think in month 13 or something, or 14. I don't want to make a mistake, but it was very close. I do remember pretty exactly around over 800,000 euros in revenue in month 12. And million must have been a month or two later.
Damn, what was the framework for that fast of a growth? What do you have?
So the success of that story came from, number one, the CEO.
Okay.
And that's where it all goes back to. The job for me and my business partner was to pick the CEO. And the CEO is great. We got how we found the CEO is that's a person that comes from the industry. Mm-hmm. They've been in the operations for a long time, had other success stories. It was easy to validate that person's abilities. It wasn't something that we had to do like a stab in the dark. And nevertheless, we still got lucky because we had a good cooperation. Trust was there quickly and so on. So that's number one. If we would have had a different CEO, somebody that's not experienced or a bad chemistry or whatever, it could have been a great business case, but we would have lost time or spent money changing the CEO and so on. So that's number one. And number two is that the market was very good. We had a clear business model and we knew how to run it. We were just lucky that the market was ripe for that product or that business model to be launched in there. Customers wanted this product right from the start. We didn't have to educate and we had to educate and explain a lot, but it was in demand. So it wasn't the case where we had to find the product market fit for like 12, 24, 36 months. It was instant. Yes, that's number two. And number three, and these are all equally important points. Neither of them is like just a complete game changer. Number three is money. unlike in our first experience building the first business back in 2012, the business model was fantastic. We were the CEO, whatever, managers of the company, not super experienced, but we were extremely, hardworking, enthusiastic, reasonably intelligent, and so on. But we didn't have the money. And it took us 5-6 years to get to a point where we could do deals in $1 million, start fundraising in $1 million, and so on. With Jordan, we could do it on day one. We put in our own money. We got friends and family related business partners to give us money. We launched our own investment platform that was growing in parallel to Jordan. And effectively funding, maybe in the beginning, it was restricting a little bit. We could have chunked in a bit more. But funding was not an issue. So we were in the right time with the right person, the CEO, with the right business model, and not unlimited, but enough funding to take advantage of the opportunity.
How much money did you need to invest for the business to start producing money?
So if we had to invest about 4 million euros in the portfolio, but that's, again, we're talking specifically a lending company. Lending company is a very capital intensive business. Yes, you need to invest a lot to build out a portfolio that generates the revenue. If you're talking about setting up the operation, finding local country manager, starting the actual issuance of loans, which is in our case is the product, right? That took us, I don't know, a couple €100,000. That's relatively easy.
And in Jordan, I can imagine the salaries are lower, right?
No, they're pretty high, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Higher than Latvia?
Depends on the position, but it's maybe slightly lower than in Latvia, but it's definitely comparable.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was a surprise, yeah.
And the second part, you actually covered it in the second point. You said the market. So this is the thing. I'm just curious, what do you think for business success, how important it is to create something where there's like this like blue ocean rather than something like a red ocean? And for a red ocean, I can imagine like a sales CRM is a red ocean. How important is that? Thinking about it.
I don't know. I think it's a very nuanced question. It depends on many different factors. Let's take an example with Jordan. You could say it was a blue ocean when it comes to the actual country. There were not a lot of competitors there. There were some, but not very competitive. So part of the reason why the country, the actual market was good for us to go into at that time was because there was little competition. It wasn't the main reason. It was one of the reasons, yes? The other reason was that it was lightly regulated. So you didn't have to get heavy licenses like it is the case now to start this business. That's also a very important thing. So there's numbers of things. It was effectively a blue ocean, but not blue ocean only from the competitive standpoint. What makes it a red or blue ocean is not only competition, it's regulation, it's readiness of the product market fit, how ready it is, how ready the consumer is. Maybe it is amazing blue market, but if you have to spend millions in TV ads to educate about how do you do this transaction online and so on, then you might be too early. It might be a blue ocean, but it's too early. So there's numbers of components in terms of what makes it blue, red ocean. And on the contrary, in my experience, there are a number of countries, number of markets where there are a lot of competitors, but the market is still big and growing, and you know that your business model works and you can make money with it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a bunch of competitors that are already doing it, and you go in there and you can be just another player, but the market is so big, existing one, and it's still growing at a good enough rate that you can still have an opportunity to build a decent business. Yes. So and therefore it's all very to some extent you can kind of calculate it specifically and precisely, and in some cases, I mean, you would not go into a blue ocean, which is a country or a market that is completely unprepared for your product. Yes, I don't know, like in some African country, if you cannot validate a customer online and your business is completely online, you don't go there, even though there's no competition. It just doesn't make sense. And on the contrary, there are places where, I mean, I don't know, like Denmark or UK, extremely competitive, very developed. You don't go in there because you have nothing to offer. So there are extremes, within which you operate. But there are exceptions, there are nuances.
And the last thing I think would be interesting to know. So basically, you as an owner got the CEO, found the market, and then you have the money to do it.
Yeah.
What's the interest for the CEO? Do you have an interest with him? Fixed salary? What's the kind of compensation?
Fixed salary, bonus, and shares.
Fixed salary, bonus, and shares.
Yes.
What's the framework? What's the like an ideal number?
It's a good question. I'm biased to my industry and let's put it this way. In the scenarios where there's an investor, but the investor is not a passive institutional investor like a VC or a fund, but an entrepreneur investor, yes, that is effectively in one way or another active, they know the industry and so on. And then there's a CEO, the executive, that is, let's say, one setup, and that is our setup in my companies. In that setup, in most cases, the CEO will be a minority, by default, a minority investor, a minority shareholder. And also largely, what also is an important point is if the CEO comes to you, or if the person comes to you and says, I want to do this business, give me the money, he's no longer just a CEO, he's already more like a founder. He's expressing the initiative to build something out, and then in that case, and if that person brings knowledge, understanding about the specific market, and all they need is just money, then that's basically a founder, a full-on founder that will most likely in the beginning have over 50% majority share, right? In my business model, in our cases, it's more a situation where I'm the founder, me and my business partner, we're the founders, we have the capital, we have a clear understanding of what business case we want to execute, let's say a new lending business in a new country, or a new fintech product in an existing country that we already have. And effectively, we need an executive, top-level executive, to make that happen. Yes? That effectively means we own the control, we are the majority decision makers, but we need executive team starting with the CEO who's fully aligned with our interests and who thinks like a shareholder and who thinks like an owner. And in that case, 10, 20%, up to 20% is like a standard formula that makes sense. Yes.
Up to 20%. Okay, that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
And you probably have it like a leveling up system. So as the company grows, they make more percent? Or you just from the get-go give 20%?
So, I mean, we have different instances with different agreements. For just confidentiality, I can't go specifically. I can give you some standard models of how it would normally look across different companies and different business cases. One is you give a starting off package, let's say 5% to the CEO, and maybe the first executive team, but oftentimes it's just the CEO. You give, let's say, a relatively smaller package, and then let's say a 3-year vesting within which there's 1/3 of allocation of another 5%. So he gets 5 now. In another year he gets 5. In another second year he gets another 5, and in the third year he gets another 5. So that is 20% altogether. Yes.
Yeah, and to make it clear, if he leaves the company, he loses the shares.
Yeah, that's a cliff. Let's say they lose the shares if they leave earlier than 2 years from the time you do a deal, and then they either lose all the shares, or most of the times they would lose the shares that have not been allocated. Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but these terms are nothing to be noted and to be done, the way I describe it. It's flexible. It depends. It's logical that you would say to a CEO that seems to be very keen, interested, motivated, and ready to work that, okay, we agree that you get a package of 15%, but I'm worried that in a year's time you maybe change your mind, that all I want to protect myself on is this risk that you just, for whatever reason, we no longer work, but I will have given you 20% of the company. In a year's time, you're no longer there. And you're a passive shareholder that adds zero value, and I have to find another CEO and
spend
give them more shares and so on, spend the money. So in that case, you just do this vesting, and that's a standard mechanism. It works. So yeah,
cool.
And yeah,
cool. I think that's a wrap. Cool conversation about how to go from a CEO to an owner. Let's go,
man. Yes,
let's go. Check out our next videos, and let's go.
Yeah, I think we covered everything.